Welcome back to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley at Moscone West. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and joining me for this interview is my good friend, Kareem Touba, Chief Executive Officer at LastPass. Kareem, welcome.
Thank you, good to see you again.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Obviously, the last time you and I spoke at any length was when you were still at Kenna and the whole acquisition by Cisco. Now you're at LastPass.
Correct.
So let's talk identity for a second, right? As I look at the identity market and its transformation over the years, the one thing I'd always notice is that identity was very segmented. We had IDPs and identity access management. We had single sign-on solutions. We had PIMs and PAMs and password. It was very segregated. I've started to see some of the market start to consolidate in certain areas. I mean, Thoma Bravo accelerated some interesting stuff, I think, in the market. But where are we from the state of identity and access? Where are we on like the holistic kind of view first?
Yeah, it's a great question. If you think about what we've sort of been observing in the broader based market, there has been a lot of that consolidation you spoke of. And that consolidation is driven through two things. It's driven by some roll-ups that have happened in various through acquisition vehicles, but also the understanding of the super large players, the Microsoft, the Oktas, the CyberArks of the world, that, you know, if they started as an IDP, they extended out with IGC, IGA, they extended out with SSO, MFA, because they recognize the value of consolidating those.
Right.
And so what you've started to see is a consolidation, which is a very good thing generally as an industry. There's a little bit of a downside to the consolidation in that it does create some challenges it helps a lot of the larger organizations, but in the middle and small to medium-sized businesses, it does create some challenges because that rule that you and I have talked about in the past, that long tail of features, oftentimes aren't needed or get utilized. So the more you consolidate, the more you put on, but you have to think about it through the lens of which market segment are you converging.
Right.
So generally, consolidation is good. You just have to be thoughtful at what type of the sector you're focused on.
Right, so great for the enterprise, have big, massive identity platforms and environments.
Correct.
Maybe not as good for the small to medium business that doesn't have a lot of users, maybe not can use all those features or need all those
features. And it's even beyond that. You know, there's a normal construct. You and I have spent most of our lives in the product world. There's a normal construct where you start to think about segmentation, the classic enterprise, mid-market, SMB space. But if you double click on the enterprise and large companies, call it 5 to 10,000, even more, there's so many companies. We met with a customer the other day that has a security team of 3, and there's 6,300 people.
Wow.
Right? Because you tend to think about the banks and the insurance companies and the retailers that have a huge investment, but there's actually a lot of very sizable companies in terms of employee count that still don't have the budget and the sophistication to be able to handle how to deal with all of this.
Got it. So where does LastPass fit into this ecosystem now, right? Started primarily as a password vault, password manager.
Right.
But you're starting to evolve outside of that. So when you think about where do you position yourself in this evolving, consolidating market, where do you see yourselves fitting in the broader industry now?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying at the top of the market, I think the large vendors have largely got it right. I think their strategy of consolidation by both building, bolting on, acquiring, and integrating makes a ton of sense, especially for the large end of the enterprise. And I would also say, even if you look up and down the market stack, most companies now have rooted solid footing with an IDP vendor of choice.
Right.
And the answer depends on kind of where you are. At the higher end of the market, you tend to use maybe an Okta. You go mid-market with Microsoft with their EX purchasing license power. You'll see them come down to SMB mid-market, but Microsoft, as we all know, has started to make strides up and down the stack. So normally when we work with customers, they've already selected an IDP.
Got it.
That means they have integration into their SSO framework, they're proxying their applications, and they're doing it for a core set of apps. What we've noticed and where the opportunity is that there's a cadre of ever-increasing applications that people are using that for a variety of reasons aren't being integrated, whether it's the SSO tax or the technical limitations, sometimes the cost limitations, or oftentimes time, meaning that the number of applications that people are swiping the card for and onboarding outstrips the capacity with which to get visibility and implement the applications into the SSO framework.
Got it.
And so we see a huge opportunity there. And about a year ago, we took the time, we have over 100,000 B2B customers, and we took the time to double click and do some surveys and spend time with them and ask them, what are you actually using the capabilities for? More often than not, it's these services and applications that are not within the SSO framework for the aforementioned reasons, which creates a huge, both a point of pain, risk, and lack of visibility, but also an opportunity.
So it's kind of the unmanaged application authentication mechanism, right?
Correct.
Like,
correct.
so if you're using your IDP and you're integrated into your SSO, you have visibility, you have control.
You have everything
see
you
it all.
need. Yeah, you have a lot of what you need.
But then you have all these, for lack of a better term, unmanaged applications.
Correct. Shadow IT, shadow AI, we are at RSA, so we've got to talk about all the buzzwords, right? So these kinds of things that have been known for a while, the rapid rate of ascension and adoption is increasing. And what used to be applications that are used by IT, now we notice and by the way, we're at that almost 1,000 employees, we see it within our organization. Almost every organization has this pent up demand for these applications that they're saying, wait, finance needs a bunch of applications.
Right.
And so every single group is putting pressure on this organization. And the area that we've sort of carved out is how do we provide very quick visibility into that and then be able to provide visibility into what those applications are, understand what the authentication workflow looks like from passwordless authentication to traditional username and passwords. What are the policies associated with it? And eventually, how do we create policy constructs?
Got it. So when you think about the gap is the unmanaged application, but how do you start to provide the visibility?
Yeah.
Is it looking across the different password, who's using certain applications and understanding concentrations of who's using what apps and then trying to figure out how to group them and get better visibility into that?
Yeah, so it's a good question. This week we recently just announced this topic around secure access experiences, which uses the heritage and strength that we had as a password management capability and then extended that to provide visibility. It turns out that the privileged position of having a plugin in the browser sits in the flow of all web traffic.
Right.
So if you have that kind of capability, we've recently extended that capability technically to now provide full visibility. So now I can not only have policies about what types of passwords I can use or enforcing multi-factor authentication, but more importantly, I can now give you full visibility into which applications that you're using that are not within your SSO construct.
Right.
So suddenly I can light up the board and tell you, wait a minute, this business is using 139 applications that are not integrated in SSO. This is the users that are using them. This is the frequency of utilization.
Right.
And that provides three really important business value. There's of course the security value.
Right.
Visibility gives you the ability to understand, am I accessing a non-sanctioned app? There's the business value, which is to say, I'm a user and the corporate application sanction for program management is Monday.com, but a bunch of people start swiping the credit card for Reich. And I want to be able to control and say, wait a minute, Reich is our normal app, or Monday is our normal application. And then thirdly is the economic one. We started to see this, of course, post-COVID. People started slashing SaaS spending, but they never were able to correlate utilization very, very quickly with licenses purchased.
Oh, interesting.
So now you can use that data to marry it up with the number of applications and the frequency with which people are using. So that application visibility unlocks a treasure trove of value across multiple dimensions.
Yeah, because one, it prevents sprawl of applications you don't necessarily want in the environment because they're not sanctioned. And hey, by the way, we're already paying for Monday.com, so why not just use what we've already approved because we've selected that. But then on top of that, it's the ability to monitor how many people are using it to make sure that your licenses are right sized, because who wants to overpay for licenses in this day? So some interesting use cases, and that's all coming from the browser plugin.
The browser plugin, the extension. Yeah, that capability turns out, but again, the privilege of the position that you sit in across multiple browsers and operating system, you leverage that matrix and footprint to provide services. And you can imagine, that there'll be other capabilities that we can integrate into that as well.
Right, because now I think, wait, so now I see all this application, I see all the users accessing it, I can get visibility into it. Now can I start doing some detection response capabilities
Correct.
or some policy enforcement capabilities?
Well, you can define a policy,
Yeah.
then enforce the policy, and you can, and we'll start announcing these things in the back half of the year that's currently being built. Policy takes on a different form. Some policies are outright blocks. Other policies are, wait a minute, I'm going to pop up a note that says, this is not a sanctioned application for the business.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Are you sure you want to do this? That's exactly right. And a really important piece is, again, by virtue of where we sit, we can not only see the access mode or the access to the application, we can see the mode. So now I can also say, wait a minute, which applications are actually using SSO to sign in? Which ones are using usernames and passwords? Are those usernames and passwords complying from a strength perspective?
Right.
Are they being vaulted? Am I using MFA?
Right.
All within a single capability.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's a very interesting bridge, right? Is now you see that for all of your unmanaged apps.
That's right.
Where the SSO players can't see that because they're not in their
They're not
environment.
integrated and they're not in that flow. And the best part is, honestly, without deploying an agent. Because this is the other thing we heard from customers. There's so much agent fatigue, right? And I mean, this has been a decade plus problem in the security industry.
Easily.
Yeah.
Right? We went through this big ramp up of agents, then everybody got tired of agents, and then we saw a ramp up with the EDR products. We saw agents again popping back up. But again, I'm seeing consolidation, right? So clients are trying to figure out how to do more with less. They don't want to manage multiple agents, so they'll throw another agent on the box. Plus, look, an agent on the operating system is not really going to help you anyways in this particular case, right?
That's right.
Being in the browser is different. We were talking earlier with somebody in the browser space. Unmanaged browsers is a gap.
Yeah.
Unmanaged applications through unmanaged browsers are even a bigger gap.
That's right, because there are more of them.
Yes, there's more of them.
There's thousands and thousands of them, right? I mean, inventories have 6,000 to 8,000 in catalogs to be able to really give people a perspective of what we're talking about. The other thing that we found that was kind of interesting in the research was the user capability and the experience aspect. Identity, I mean, there are 2,000-3,000 vendors here.
Yeah.
The user experience, or the number of security technologies that the user interfaces in the security space is tiny.
Yeah.
Identity is one of the sole categories that's front and center to the user.
Yeah.
So trying to balance and get the capabilities that you service and push forward in front of the end user, right, and as transparent and easy to use as possible is paramount to getting the identity, getting the users to buy into the consolidation.
Yeah.
In theory, look, what do we know? We know administrators have been dealing with crappy interfaces
for a long time.
And, and yes, we all make better versions of it, but, they are what they are. But the user, that if you want them to come along for the ride and have maximum adoption, you got to make it as simple and least intrusive as possible.
Yeah, it's all about friction, right? You got to remove as much friction out of the equation or it won't get used. And then these unmanaged applications, you don't get control over them.
That's right.
Right? And that's the challenge. I always said app user data, right? In the application, that the unmanaged applications are the ones, because there's thousands, tens of thousands of them all over the place.
They are.
Because if you think we have 4,000 security vendors, think about all the other technologies out there that all get access pretty much through a browser these days.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, the other piece of interesting research that we found was getting back to the sort of like what's the business value.
Yeah.
It's not just making sure that people aren't sanctioned applications. I bring up the Reich and Monday example because this was an example brought forward by a customer where they said, we've got multiple applications in a particular domain, and the real impediment to productivity is people use that, then they output the data into whatever format that platform uses.
Yeah.
And now we go to different meetings that has different format, and people that are processing the data are saying, wait a minute, we haven't standardized on an application for project management, so now I have to orient the application that the person is using with the data that they're presenting, which is an impediment to productivity and consistency.
Right.
So there's that visibility in what you can actually do with it in terms of ascribing business value is just multidimensional, all rooted in the identity of the user and the applications that they're accessing.
Yeah. visibility most people don't have.
Yep, not in an easy way.
Kareem, thank you very much.
Yep.
If you want to learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/LastPass RSAC. Kareem, always a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
Stay with us. We've got more interviews coming up on RSAC Conference 2025.